Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Park Avenue Armory to FLEXN. FLEXN is a completely new art form that was invented in the cultural crucible of Brooklyn and East New York by a powerful and imaginative generation of creative beings, one of whom is the great man at the end here, Reg Rock Gray, one of the inventors of FLEXN. Here he is.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks a lot.
As an art form, FLEXN is all about how to survive as a young person of color in certain parts of the world, that would be everywhere, which is massive self-reinvention at every moment, massive creativity in the face of every obstacle, in the face of every challenge, virtuosity, and the idea that all solutions from now on are going to have to be brilliant and creative and inspired and instant in terms of a response time. This main forms of the dance that you'll see tonight, gliding, how to move through obstacles, how to stay smooth in rough conditions, how to keep your cool in the midst of a lot of heat. Bone breaking, which is literally when you have been broken and completely shut down, you recombine your bones in some new form and you come back at full strength, with new strength. You reimagine yourself completely. Connecting, which is super rapid, highly virtuosic, everything must connect and reconnect in new ways so it stays alive and stays afloat. And then, of course, Reg's specialty, which is pausing, which is what you do with a movie on your phone. Stop it, move it forward and back, open it up, shut it down. What it means to take every single move that you make in your body without thinking and stop and break it up into all the component parts. And again, reimagine it and re-experience it in the depth. And it's the depth charge that's actually inside every move that is opened up by this man over here. Dance, of course, is about movement. And what's very exciting is we started our collaboration in this room, in this building, for this project the first week of August. 3 weeks before, Eric Gardner had been choked to death for selling individual cigarettes. Now, a lot of young people of color are shot by cops, and it's a story for a day, if it's even a story. 3 weeks later, the story of Eric Gardner was not going away. People were looking at that video. A man dying on the pavement at the feet of cops who didn't even bother to ask how he was. And soon people were in the streets. And a week into our first rehearsals, Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson. And all across America, people were in the streets. And there was a sense that this has gone far enough. There's an entire system of mass incarceration, entire system of devaluing the lives of an entire segment of the population, and it's wrong, and it has to be turned around. That informed what you're going to see tonight. But we also wanted, hi everyone, come on in, get really good seats. Come on over to the middle. Thanks for coming. What we wanted to do is really make this piece about a movement that is now underway, and we wanted people to meet the leaders of the movement, and we have here three of the most extraordinary individuals who are moving mountains, person by person, with courage and vision. Frequently, when you leave a Hollywood problem movie, you say, oh, it's too bad there's such injustice in the world, what can you do? Well, hello, this is not the case here. Here, you're among the visionaries, and you're among leaders, and you're among people who are putting their shoulders to the wheel, and we want you to meet them tonight. And very, very, very pleased that we have Shawn Dove here, from the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. Shawn, thank you so much for being present. Yes. Rachel Gilmer is here from the African American Policy Forum and the Live Wire, and Ronald Tabano is here from the Wildcat Academy Charter School, the John Lindsay School that has been such a path breaker. And our theme tonight, which you will see from the show, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You will see there's a number in the evening which is about going to college or going to jail. And in certain neighborhoods, there's a lot of money and structure in place to make sure the young people in that neighborhood are going to jail. And in other neighborhoods, there's a lot of money and structure in place to make sure those young people will go to college. How we structurally shift what we have been given and how we move forward. I would love each panelist to speak from a personal point of view, something that is a moment where you realize what you're devoting your life to and intensifies your need to see it all the way through. And I'm wondering, Shawn, could we start with you?
Sure, Peter. Can everyone hear me? It's interesting when you think of the topic college or jail, and just really brings me back to a transformational moment in my adolescence and growing up when I moved from Harlem to the Upper West Side and began to sell loose joints on the corner of, this is a young crowd, they may not know what loose joints are, but on the corner of Amsterdam Avenue and 80th Street. And at the same time, I got involved in a youth program called the Dome Project where I met my first mentor. But I was dancing on both sides of the streets, 80th Street in Amsterdam, the corner where I was selling drugs and saying, you know, you pass me by, you won't get high. 2 blocks away was the Dome Project, and I was dancing both back and forth. Single parent household, strong Jamaican mom, education was really important. But it's something really powerful about the right words spoken into your life at the right time. And one day, John Simon, who was also my basketball coach and my mentor, he said to me, you have potential, Shawn. If you spend less time on the corner of 80th Street in Amsterdam doing what you're doing, and more time at the basement of All Angels Church in the Dome Project, you can do things. And I took John up on that offer. And when we talk about structures in communities and neighborhoods that are driving young people, particularly people of color, to the prison system, there are also structures and that's love, there's compassion, it's community-based organizations. And so me and a group of 13 other guys were part of this basketball team, and it literally, you know, kept me off of that corner. And yes, I had hardships. I still spent time on that corner, but it was a safe haven. And so when I think of that, the title, it was a Dome Project that took me off the path to prison and put me on the path to college.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ronald, would you say a word about the structure you've created and how you're moving it?
Well, I think first, I know the topic is prison and college, but I think we have to start thinking prison and high school. 75% of the young people, 75% of all individuals that are incarcerated do not have high school diplomas. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit about what you were saying. What we have found, and I think you'll see more of this, it's going to become the common term, it's engagement. And when is a student engaged? What happens? When does that student start to realize that they have a future? And you know, it's the easiest thing in the world for people to contribute to, because it could be a friend, it could be a parent, it doesn't have to be, it could be a teacher, it could be the neighborhood grocery store man. Somebody makes a connection with the young person and believes in that young person, and that is so powerful in a person's life. And you know, unfortunately, young people don't set goals because their circumstances make them live in the real world. And if you know, they don't see the future, they don't see the future of possibilities. At the school, what we did is we try to make them see the future by having internships. All the students go to school and they go to work, and it's an amazing transformation when they realize that work isn't magic. They belong in that particular venue. They could do the work. And I'm going to tell you a quick story, and then I'll turn it over to you. We had a young lady, and we had her at an internship at Price Waterhouse. And her name was Hope. And she came in February. We put her on the internship. And, at first she came to me, and she was a little nervous. She said, they speak so quickly, and they dress so nicely. And I said, don't worry. They understand that you're going to be an intern, and they'll take care of you. I didn't hear a peep out of her or a complaint out of her until May. She was on the softball team, which I was coaching, and she comes on to the softball field, and she says to me, oh, the job. I said, wait a minute, after all this time you're having this problem? She says, no, I'm not having a problem. She says, it's May, all the college students are being hired for the summer, and I have to train them. And she says, you know what? They don't have any common sense. So, it's just exposure that this isn't magic, that the real world is a possibility, and that you belong in that real world. And so it gives them hope and confidence.
So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I grew up in a very small town in Oregon. I'm biracial, black and white, incredibly racially ambiguous. My father was on drugs, and so, there wasn't a lot of time for biracial identity development, and I went to a low-income public school but won a lottery to go to a private school in my town. I was the only student of color in the entire school, and literally I began to associate all of the things I saw around this notion of success with whiteness. And I began to really resent my father and his drug use, and associate my father's drug use with negative stereotypes that I had about blackness. So how deep is the power of racism that I could hate my own father, who loved me despite being on drugs, who took care of me despite being on drugs, because of the prevalence of racism in this country. I always felt invisible among my peers and among my teachers. I was a kid who worked really, really hard, never got called smart, always got called a smart ass. There was these notions of defiance around being a woman of color where I could never just be smart. I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to go to Vassar College in New York. Still had not been called smart by the time I got to Vassar. Once I got to Vassar, all these dynamics around wanting to pass for white continued to become exacerbated. I was in a largely white campus. And eventually I found a mentor, a black teacher, who pulled me aside and really took me under. It was once I discovered black studies that I began to completely change my understanding of, my entire life feeling like there was something wrong with me, to feeling like, oh, there's something wrong with the world, in which I would feel like I don't have a place in it. And it was from there that I really began to devote my life to social justice and to organizing. And once I started organizing, I realized that black women were at the helm of organizing. Black women are leading the Black Lives Matter movement. The majority of the Black Panthers, people don't know, were black women. But consistently, the way racism is framed in this country is not under a narrative that centers black women's experience. We see the My Brother's Keeper initiative, which is wonderful. There should be initiatives for boys, but that has led to this understanding that girls of color are not also at risk. We see a movement that's risen in this country around the death of Mike Brown and the death of Eric Garner, which there should be movements. We should be saying, I can't breathe. We should be wearing hoodies for Trayvon Martin. But the fact that we know how to embody men's experiences, and women are also getting killed, girls are also getting pushed out of school, yet our movement does not know how to embody those experiences, even though black women are leading that movement, is really, really troubling. And so a lot of the work that my organization has been doing is to say that, hey, black women and women in color in general are also at risk, and we cannot have a movement that says Black Lives Matter when we are not rallying around the cases of women who have also been killed. We work with Rakia Boyd's brother, a 21-year-old who was killed in Chicago by the police. And he says that, I would get all the time invited to Trayvon Martin rallies, but when I got invited, they would say, don't speak about your sister, but we know you've been through it, so just talk. The fact that, we do not know how to rally around this young man who's lost his sister is just so tragic. And the amount of lack of support he feels is just, there should be some urgency around supporting these folks. And so, I'm really happy to be here today and to, continue to, think about how we engender the movement and the short-sightedness of a conversation that doesn't center women in it.
Thank you so much. Shawn, would you talk about next steps that you're undertaking at this moment after that corner?
Sure. So, and thank you, Rachel, for your comments because, I lead a campaign for Black Male Achievement. It's a national membership organization that is focusing on strengthening leaders and organizations that are focused on improving the life outcomes of Black men and boys in America. And Black men and boys is the point of departure, narrow angle lens of our work, but our wide angle lens is really about community and strengthening community, which is inclusive of women, girls, the LGBT community. And so I think the first next step is realizing that in our communities across the country that there is no Calvary that's coming to save the day in our community, right? There is no presidential, my brother's keeper limo. There is no philanthropic paratroopers coming in to save our communities. That the iconic leaders that we're waiting for, guess what? We are it, right? So that's number one. But then the other thing I think is really important, and I'm just really excited of the location of where we are on Park Avenue, right? And, the people will say, your story is either Park Avenue or the park bench. And, some of us have experienced both. But I think that we have to find a way to create opportunities for people to get in and contribute. And while I lead a campaign for Black Male Achievement, if this is just seen as an opportunity only for African American Black male leaders, we're not going anywhere. So how do we open the tent and how do we include folks from all races, all genders in this movement? I think also the whole notion of policy and combining policy and programs. And typically, and this happens a lot in the field of philanthropy, there's so much of siloing and isolation. And we have to be really intentional about breaking those barriers and getting into cross-sector leaders and issues in the same room, on the same stage, being able to talk about the same issues.
Thank you so much. Ronald, would you step in from there and talk about next steps?
I think we have to, piggybacking on what we've talked about, I think we need more non-traditional opportunities. And one of the things we are stressing now too is more groups for young ladies, groups for men, and to empower young ladies and men separately and apart and yet together. And also we want to be non-traditional. We're doing it used to be STEM, is now a STEAM class. And it's half men, half women, and just to see the empowerment of being in something that's so advanced for them. And one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to make that not just a school project, but a bigger project. And we're working now, we're about to work with the VA, and as part of the project, the young men and the young women in the school are going to repair wheelchairs and scooters. And we think it's a way of them giving back and seeing, that everybody has it tough and you can overcome that. And also we want them to understand that there are so many opportunities that they have no idea. That they're in such a limited frame of mind that there are jobs that are there that if you apply yourself, there are plenty of opportunities out there.
So I think one of the things that we're working to do is really fill the knowledge desert that exists around Black girls and Black women's lives. We recently came out with a report, Black Girls Matter, on the school to prison pipeline in Black girls. And we found that Black girls were 53 times more likely to be expelled than white girls in New York City public schools, 11 more times likely to be suspended. And all of this information is new. When we look at the major mainstream conversation around the school to prison pipeline, as I said earlier, Black girls are largely missing from the narrative. And I think just in putting out the information, we're trying to, shift folks' understanding of what the problem is, to say this is something that impacts Black boys, but this is not just about, the need to fix Black boys or Black boys have a particular problem, but this is actually a problem that's spanning across all Black people. Therefore, it's an issue of systemic racism that needs to be addressed. And I think including women and girls in the narrative actually strengthens our argument that these are systemic issues. in addition to sort of building our research base, we're also really looking to create opportunities for women and girls to tell their stories. We work with a young woman out of Los Angeles, Tanisha Anderson, who takes the bus every day to school. In Los Angeles, they don't have citywide bus passes or free bus passes for students. And so she couldn't afford one, so she had to wait and ask the bus driver to pick her up every day and basically give her a ride for free. Because of this, she was sometimes late if the bus was full or if the bus driver wouldn't do it that day. And there would be a police officer outside the school who would literally sit outside the school's doors, and kids who were tardy to school, he would pass out truancy tickets. So Tanisha was trying to get to school, and literally a police officer is giving her a ticket for trying to get through the doors. She accumulated a few tickets, and she was 15, so didn't know she was supposed to be paying tickets. Just was 15 and didn't know she had to do that. And a police officer, when she accrued $250 and hadn't paid it, a police officer came into her classroom and arrested her, and she ended up in solitary confinement for a month. It's just tragic that we are literally pushing kids out of school further who are trying to get to school and somehow sending them the message that you need to get to school or we're going to send you to prison, literally. And so I think, as we continue to shed light on women and girls' experiences, it continues to help us understand what solutions we need to put in place. We have a national town hall series where we're inviting local women and girls to tell their stories before a panel of decision makers. And it's so amazing to be in a room where we talk about what's happening to Black women and girls for 4 hours at a time. Rarely do we ever sit in a room and just talk about girls without saying, what about the boys? It's so rare that we just talk about the girls. And so it's been a really powerful experience to listen to girls' story and to confront decision makers with these stories who are held accountable to doing something about them. The last thing I'll say, and just to kind of piggyback off your point around My Brother's Keeper not really being a magic bullet, I think the problem with this narrative just around boys is that, boys are being raised in the same communities as girls. They go to the same schools. They're being raised largely by single mothers. And so if mothers don't have jobs and if mothers are struggling to raise their kids, their boys, then even if we just wanted to focus on the boys, they wouldn't be doing better because their moms don't have the resources to support them. So we really need to build narratives that talk about the intrinsic connections in our community. And we've led a campaign to ask the president to actually realign the My Brother's Keeper initiative to include women and girls too, and to really address the systemic issues at play. This is largely a mentoring program, which is good. We need mentoring, but we can't act like mentoring will somehow solve the issue of white supremacy. And so, if you're at all interested in engaging in our work, we invite you to visit our website. We know that this work takes partnership and organizing, so we look forward to the opportunity to potentially work with you all.
Would you speak about structural change that you hope to see in these next years?
Sure. I think that first and foremost that what I'm really excited about is that we have a whole new wave of activists that are looking at policies that have inside-outside games, and that there is not just one approach to looking at structures. It's a legislative approach, but you also have to have an activism approach, the use of social media. In the media, if you have a phone in your pocket, you are part of attacking and raising and elevating structures. I think environments like this, to have these conversations like this, to bring these issues forward. And so I think we are at a moment in this country where we have to maximize it. There's a level of momentum, conversations around race, in a level, in a way, we got a long way to go, but that we have not had. And I think that we have to continue to push and keep the momentum.
Ronald.
I think the charter movement is the right movement for a lot of the change. I know it's a hot potato and people don't understand, really what charters are about because of the propaganda. But charter movement it's offering opportunities to young people who don't get the opportunity, who are stuck in a school system or a neighborhood with poor schools. And the charter movement does offer viable alternatives from pre-K all the way through the high school level. And we need more alternatives. Just some things just don't work for some people. For some students, they need something that's a little bit different. So the more variety and the more opportunity to change, the better we're going to be. And if you can see that parents are involved, parents are engaged, because they're lining up to sign up their children for these schools because they know there's a better way. And when you see there's 1,000 applications for only 100 spots, you can't say that, parents are not trying to get the best for their child. And I think we need more alternatives, whether it be charter or some other alternatives. We do need, what we have isn't working necessarily. We need some change.
We were talking about, before this panel about the importance of the ability to imagine to social justice work. We never would have gotten out of slavery if we couldn't imagine an alternate reality. And I think what's so beautiful about the movement right now is being led by young folks who believe that something can be different and have enough pride in ourselves that we aren't going to accept sort of individualistic solutions that have been presented to us. I think we need to abolish prisons. I think we need to fundamentally change the nature of policing in this country. I think police feel like they need to control communities, which is not what policing needs to be at all. And I think, we need to, again, push back on these individualistic solutions that we're seeing come from the state, like mentoring. Like mentoring would have never gotten us out of just, get a mentor and you'll get out of slave, you won't be a slave anymore. Like some of the solutions that are being presented from the White House are just really, really problematic and help sort of obscure what our understanding of the problem is. I was in Ferguson about a couple weeks before the No Bill was announced, and the mayor had signed on to the My Brother's Keeper initiative and was holding a gathering, a summit, to launch the initiative. It was held at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. There were really no young black people there, not many black people there at all, and he didn't mention Michael Brown once. He did not mention the issue of police brutality. So how could he have a Black Male Achievement Initiative in the middle of Ferguson in which he's not going to talk about any of these issues, in which at the same time he's pulling in military equipment and the National Guard to use against black boys, and then somehow saying he cares about black male achievement. So I think these individualistic solutions sometimes just end up being window dressing, and I really think we have to demand more if we really ever want to see our way out of these disparities.
Although I have to jump in and say that My Brother's Keeper is far more than just mentoring, Rachel, because mentoring is a part of it.
Yeah.
As you know, there was a challenge that the president made for cities to create systems and strategies that include early childhood education, that include police reform in communities. And so I think that what we fall into is this narrative of divide and conquer, either or, that is not just black men and boys or black women, that we are in this together. And the work that I see on the ground, so much of this is led by black women, right? And it's inclusive of families. So, I don't want to leave here to give the audience impression that My Brother's Keeper is all about mentoring. There is so much system change in this community challenge that I am seeing, and that's why I'm excited about it. And the other piece is, I would not be sitting here if it were not for a mentor, right? Mm-hmm. If it were not for John Simon and mentoring in a vacuum is not the answer. But I know personally in my story, I would not be sitting here if it were not for mentoring. And you talked about the
yes.
mentor at Vassar that provided you with a transformational moment. So I just had to raise a flag and say, look, I'm mentoring. Raise your hand if you are here because a mentor has helped you. All right.
Yeah, and I was not trying to knock My Brother's Keeper off knock it out across the board. I was trying to say that in certain cities where we're seeing conservative officials sign on without doing the systemic work, it's problematic. There are cities that are implementing it well or implementing in better ways, and so it's definitely not, as you said.
And it's about leadership. And it's about leadership and municipal leadership, grassroots leadership, and I think that's a key point.
Yeah.
Good evening, leaders.
Beautiful.
Everyone in the room is in leadership mode now. May I just say, you're in the arts. The arts are about overcoming the systemic failure that we're seeing around us, which is a failure of imagination. Can we not imagine something better? Of course we can. Let us begin to imagine something better together and let the best ideas prevail. What we're doing tonight is what the humanities do, which is systematically rehumanize those who have been dehumanized systematically. and emphasize that the dehumanization actually dehumanizes the dehumanizers. The entire society is at risk of forgetting basic humanity. So what we're talking about is not just reaching out to help someone else. We're also just talking about re-centering that basic idea of what constitutes a human being. And to say a human being is immense, overwhelming, powerful, and profoundly flourishing when part of a community. And that idea of taking young people or anyone else at particularly vulnerable or difficult or low moments of their life and isolating them and holding someone in a steel and cement box alone in solitary confinement for a week, a month, a year, 2 years, and 10 years is a social catastrophe and a human obscenity. We need a movement now to end all solitary. We need a movement now to give young people the support and creative element in which they flourish. And the entire society now needs to move towards creative solutions because we've seen business as usual and it is a disaster. Long live creativity. And now let's hand the evening over to the inspired dancers of the Dream Ring. Reg, will you just say a word about the Dream Ring? What does that mean?
Well, the Dream Ring, well, hello, everybody. The Dream Ring is a community of dancers that's come to my organization pretty much to dance and be in competitions with each other. And what these guys do is they enter the competition. When they enter the competition, it always has to be a 2-on-2, or it has to be a group, because we have this belief system that you don't do it all yourself. You know, everything needs a community. Everything needs a bit. It could be a spark there, but there's also, you know, there's always going to be someone you can lean on. So in this Dream Ring, the ring meaning like the circle. So the circle is pretty much like, you know, everyone is together. Everyone comes together, and when you come together, the circle grows. You can't be in the circle. You got to be a part of the circle. So that's pretty much what the Dream Ring, you know what I'm saying, is doing in the community of Brooklyn, and pretty much on this stage tonight. And show you a community of people that actually come together and has a great vision.
Let us take advantage of the amazing time we live in, and dance is about movement and change. Bring it on.
Let's do it.